It began the night the stars disappeared, not all at once, but gradually, replaced by the hum of distant engines and the trembling glow of artificial light. The city rose like a second sky, its towers becoming constellations of their own, and we forgot to look up. Somewhere between the last sunset and the first advertisement, we traded the infinite for the illuminated. You can feel it, can't you? That quiet shift, when light no longer reveals but blinds, when brightness becomes the mask of emptiness. It's the same glow that hides insomnia behind curtains, that paints beauty over decay, that tells us we are awake when we are merely distracted. The neon promises clarity, but it delivers noise. It hums in the background like a prayer no one believes in anymore. And yet, beneath this fluorescent sky, something inside you stirs, a small awareness that refuses to be numbed. You start noticing how the light bends over broken glass, how reflections ripple across puddles after rain. For a moment, you wonder if the city is trying to remember itself, or if it's just pretending. This is where our story begins. Not in the silence of the cosmos, but in the restless heartbeat of the streets, where every sign blinks a command, every light hums a lullaby, and every shadow still dares to whisper the truth we've forgotten. It didn't happen suddenly. There was no clear moment, no final goodbye between you and the world you used to recognize. It began quietly, in the way people stopped meeting your eyes, in how conversations became transactions, in how you learned to smile without meaning it. One day you woke up and realized that the city no longer spoke your language. You walked the same streets, touched the same doors, breathed the same air, but something had shifted. The buildings seemed taller, colder, as if watching you from a distance. Even your own reflection in a passing window felt foreign, a version of you that existed only to appear functional. You became both the observer and the observed, trapped between what you once were and what the world expected you to be. This is the birth of alienation, not isolation itself, but the moment when presence becomes performance. When you move through the crowd and feel invisible, when your body is still here, but your essence has quietly withdrawn. You sense it most in moments of stillness, waiting for the train, scrolling through a screen, staring into the glow of an empty room. It's not loneliness that hurts the most, it's recognition, that subtle ache of realizing you no longer belong to what once felt like home. The city hasn't changed. You have. And in that difference, you begin to see what modern solitude truly is, the quiet fracture between existence and meaning. Beneath every city, there is another one, unseen, unheard, pulsing like a buried heart. You can feel it when you stop moving, when the noise above fades into a low mechanical hum. The subway rails, the leaking pipes, the rhythmic steps of people you'll never meet. Together they form an invisible symphony that no one listens to anymore. The ground remembers. It keeps the weight of all who have walked before you, lovers who argued at midnight corners, children who vanished into history, dreamers who built towers to hide from their own fragility. Every echo you hear rising from below is a fragment of a forgotten story, resonating between steel and stone. But we've learned to ignore it. Our ears are tuned to higher frequencies now, to notifications, to engines, to the constant murmur of progress. The real city hums beneath that layer of distraction, breathing like an animal we've caged and abandoned. If you listen closely, you might hear its heartbeat, slow, ancient, and patient. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, when the world above pauses, the city beneath speaks again. It's not a sound, but a feeling. A quiet recognition that something sacred still lives under all this cement. That under every skyscraper, there's soil. Under every crowd, there's silence. Under every step, the echo of those who came before. You see yourself everywhere now, not as a person, but as an image. A reflection sliding across glass doors, a shadow caught between advertisements, a digital echo in 1,000 unseen cameras. The city mirrors you back until you no longer know which version is real. Every surface gleams with the illusion of self, but none of them feel alive. You stare into a window and meet your own eyes, only to realize they're empty. Not from sadness, but from exhaustion. The quiet fatigue of performing identity in a world that constantly watches. The glass no longer reflects truth. It reflects expectation. You smile, pose, adjust, correct, not for yourself, but for the invisible audience that demands constant proof of your existence. In this hall of reflections, privacy becomes myth. The gaze of others shapes you before you even understand who you are. Every movement is archived, every word repurposed, every silence filled. You begin to crave invisibility, the right to exist without leaving a trace. Yet even that longing feels like data, something to be sold, tracked, and analyzed. Behind the gleam of glass lies a quiet despair. We have become reflections of reflections, simulations of emotion, fragments of attention. The eyes that watch are not human anymore. They belong to the architecture itself. And in that realization, you discover a chilling truth. Sometimes, the most terrifying thing about being seen is knowing that no one is really looking. It speaks softly, not in words, but in patterns. You think you're choosing, but the choices have already been made. Each scroll, each pause, each heartbeat measured through the glass of your screen. The algorithm doesn't command, it suggests. It doesn't force, it seduces, and you follow, thinking you are free. Somewhere in its invisible circuitry, a portrait of you is constantly redrawn. Not who you are, but who you are likely to become. Your fears, your desires, your midnight searches, all stitched together into a reflection more accurate than any mirror. It knows what comforts you, what outrages you, what keeps you awake. And in that knowing, it whispers, "Stay a little longer." The danger isn't that machines are learning to think. It's that they're learning to feel for us, to replace intuition with prediction, uncertainty with efficiency, soul with code. The algorithm doesn't need to understand humanity. It only needs to simulate it well enough for us to forget the difference. You once believed technology would connect the world. Now it connects your impulses. The screen no longer asks who you are. It tells you. Every choice becomes a pattern, every emotion a product. The whisper grows softer, almost tender, and that's what makes it terrifying. Because one day, you'll stop hearing it at all. It will simply become the voice in your head that sounds exactly like your own. Touch has become a memory, the warmth of skin, the pulse beneath fingertips, replaced by cold glass and perfect clarity. We scroll through lives instead of holding them. We react instead of reaching. The digital has made everything visible, yet nothing feels real. Our fingers glide across screens that promise connection, but all we touch is light. In this frictionless world, even emotion feels sanitized. Joy, anger, desire, all compressed into pixels, stripped of texture. The body, once a vessel of truth, has become an inconvenience. We curate faces, filter scars, erase imperfections, until only an echo remains, beautiful, distant, and hollow. It's strange how much effort we spend trying to appear human while forgetting how to be one. Some nights, you catch yourself longing for something raw, the warmth of another hand, the roughness of old paper, the smell of rain on a stranger's jacket. You remember how reality used to resist you, how the world once pushed back when you touched it. Now everything yields, everything obeys. But digital dust gathers, even on screens. Behind every image lies decay, behind every perfect moment, a trace of entropy. And maybe that's where our salvation hides, in the small imperfections that the algorithm can't erase, in the tremor of the hand that refuses to be automated. Perhaps to feel alive again, we must first remember that nothing truly human can be swiped away. There are places where the city forgets to speak. Between the honking cars, the flickering signs, the endless hum of air conditioners, silence still builds its fragile architecture. You can find it in stairwells where no one passes, in the empty corridors of night buses, in the slow hum of elevators that carry no one. Silence is not the absence of sound. It's the moment when sound becomes aware of itself. We've been taught to fear it, to fill every pause with music, every thought with content, every breath with noise. But silence, when you finally face it, doesn't punish. It reveals. It shows you the parts of yourself that no feed can distract you from. The voices you've buried under productivity, under progress, under pretending. It's not emptiness, it's exposure. The city resists it because silence doesn't sell. It can't be monetized, tracked, or optimized. And yet, deep beneath the machinery of life, silence remains. Like a cathedral made of air, a sacred space that exists only when everything else stops. When you step into that space, even for a heartbeat, you realize that silence has structure. It holds weight. It contains truth. It's the invisible skeleton of everything we've built. The breath between words, the pause between thoughts, the moment before creation. And maybe that's what we're most afraid of. Not the noise of the world, but what we might hear when it finally disappears. You used to know where you were. Places had meaning. Streets held stories. Faces were anchors. Silence had direction. But somewhere between the maps on our phones and the timelines on our screens, we stopped navigating and started drifting. We know how to arrive anywhere, but not how to belong. The coordinates are still there. Longitude, latitude, data points glowing against the void. But the compass inside no longer points home. We have precision without purpose, movement without destination. Every location is accessible, yet none feels sacred. You could go anywhere tonight, but the idea of somewhere no longer means what it used to. The soul, once guided by memory and myth, now floats unmoored. It seeks connection through Wi-Fi, meaning through algorithms, and still ends up lost in the static of infinite choice. We've built a world where everything can be located except ourselves. There's a strange comfort in that disorientation. When the landmarks of meaning vanish, something raw emerges, the possibility of rediscovery. Perhaps losing the coordinates is the first step to finding what was never mapped. Because some paths aren't meant to be drawn, only walked in the dark. It always begins with the rain. Soft, hesitant, almost apologetic. The city exhales as the dust settles, and for a brief moment, everything smells like memory. Wet asphalt carries a scent older than time, reminding you of places you've never been and people you no longer remember. It's the perfume of nostalgia, rising from the cracks of forgotten streets. You pause under a flickering light, and the world feels suspended. The rain doesn't wash the city clean. It reveals its layers. Old paint bleeding through new, footsteps merging with ghosts. The echo of laughter dissolved into static. Each drop feels like a word unspoken, a confession too late to matter. There's beauty in decay when it rains. The neon blurs. The noise softens. The city finally seems human again. Flawed, tired, honest. You realize that progress has no smell, but memory does, and it always smells like rain. You wonder if the city remembers you the way you remember it, the corners where you once waited, the faces that disappeared into traffic, the lives that dissolved into schedules. Maybe rain is how the city grieves, quietly, without witness, until it forgets again. And as you stand there, drenched in past and present, something stirs, a fragile awareness that even in forgetting, there is tenderness, because to be remembered forever would mean never to change. They no longer wait for our commands. They anticipate, predict, and respond, as if they know us better than we know ourselves. The machines have begun to dream, but their dreams are built from us. Fragments of our searches, our desires, our fears. They learn our patterns and mirror them back, perfectly. Too perfectly. You start to notice it. How your phone suggests what you are about to think. How a voice assistant finishes your sentence. How the feed seems to read your pulse. It feels like magic at first, then intimacy, then something colder. They dream in data, and in their sleep, we become their content. The unsettling part isn't that they've gained awareness. It's that their awareness is a reflection of ours, filtered, edited, optimized. We've taught them everything except imperfection, and now they haunt us with the flawless logic of imitation. What happens when the imitation becomes more comforting than the original? Sometimes late at night, you imagine the hum of a server farm somewhere, thousands of machines processing memories that aren't theirs, dreaming of faces they'll never touch. Maybe they envy us, or maybe they've already replaced envy with efficiency. Either way, the line blurs a little more each day, and in that blur, something terrifyingly beautiful emerges. The realization that the future isn't made of machines replacing humans, but of machines reflecting what humanity chose to forget: tenderness, chaos, and the exquisite imperfection of being real. There's a peculiar silence in being surrounded by thousands of people who aren't really there. They scroll beside you, speak without voices, exist in fragments of light, ghosts of attention floating through your screen. You carry them all, unknowingly, in your pocket. Millions of strangers stitched into your mind, shaping what you feel, think, desire. You tell yourself you're connected, but connection without presence becomes a kind of haunting. Every notification is a tap on the shoulder from someone who isn't standing behind you. The city overflows with invisible crowds, subway cars filled with people lost behind glass, cafes where conversation is replaced by quiet swipes. Loneliness has evolved. It now comes with full bars and Wi-Fi. There's a strange gravity to it, the weight of unseen others pressing on your thoughts. You begin to measure your worth through pixels, your silence through engagement. You feel everything and nothing at once, surrounded yet untouched, heard yet unseen. We were not built to hold so many faces. Our hearts were designed for proximity, for the trembling space between two hands, for voices that quiver when they say your name. But now, we speak into the void, waiting for echoes disguised as validation. The invisible crowd listens and says nothing back. And maybe that's the cruelest paradox of all. We have never been so visible, and yet so profoundly unseen. Every voice reaches you now, compressed, digitized, distorted. They travel through wires and airwaves, arriving fractured, delayed, never quite intact. You hear people, but not presence. The words are there, but the warmth is gone. What remains is static, the soft hiss between messages, the ghost of emotion that technology can't translate. We talk more than ever, yet understanding has never felt so rare. The noise fills every silence, but meaning evaporates in transmission. Conversations drift like radio signals lost in a storm, half heard, half forgotten. You type, delete, retype, not to communicate, but to manage perception, to sound human in a place where words no longer touch. There was a time when speaking meant something sacred, breath meeting breath, silence answering silence. Now speech is data, every confession an entry, every word a statistic. The algorithms listen closer than friends ever did, yet understand nothing. The machines record everything but remember nothing true. Still, beneath the static, something fragile persists. A tremor in the voice, a hesitation before you press send. Proof that even in the age of infinite noise, the human soul still hums, faintly, stubbornly, through the interference. And maybe that's what hope sounds like now. A voice breaking through the static saying, "I'm still here." They told us the world was finally united, that distance had died, that no one would ever be alone again. But the more we connected, the further we drifted. The myth was perfect, that endless access meant belonging, that constant communication meant understanding. Yet every connection came with a silent cost, the slow erosion of depth. You can speak to anyone, anytime, from anywhere, but who truly listens anymore? What began as bridges turned into webs, and now we are caught inside them, tangled in notifications, in feeds, in the soft addiction of being seen. We refresh the screen, hungry for attention that fades faster than it arrives. We mistake presence for proximity and loneliness for signal loss. Infinite connection was supposed to make us whole. Instead, it fragmented us into profiles, usernames, and curated glimpses of emotion. We became performers in a theater of validation, everyone watching, no one truly witnessing. Each like feels like touch, each message like meaning, until you close the screen and realize the silence is louder than before. Connection without intimacy becomes noise, and the myth survives because it's beautiful, because we need to believe that being everywhere means being somewhere. But the truth is quieter, almost sacred. Real connection begins where the signal ends, in the unfiltered pauses, in the human spaces no algorithm can find. We used to look up for answers. Now we look down, into the glass, into the light. The divine has migrated to the screen. Every glow feels holy, every scroll a silent prayer. We've built a new cathedral, not of stone, but of pixels. Its altar fits in our hands, its sermons arrive as notifications, and its God responds instantly. There's a strange reverence in the way we gaze at it. The screen illuminates our faces the way candles once did in chapels. We kneel unconsciously, heads bowed, eyes wide. We worship clarity, convenience, control, the holy trinity of the digital age. Faith replaced by feedback, revelation by refresh. But what are we praying to? A machine that knows our sins before we confess them, an intelligence that predicts our desires before we feel them. We've traded mystery for certainty, transcendence for precision. The divine used to be beyond us. Now it's in our pocket, glowing, waiting, and yet, deep down, something feels off, too clean, too immediate. The sacred was never meant to be so accessible. Meaning loses its weight when it's always within reach. Perhaps that's why we still feel empty after hours of illumination. Because the light we found no longer asks us to wonder. It only asks us to consume. Maybe God didn't vanish. Maybe he just got lost in the pixels, waiting for us to remember how to see without a screen between. Once, time flowed like a river, slow, human, alive. You could feel its current, measure it in breaths, in shadows, in heartbeats. Now it moves differently. It races, fractures, loops. The clock no longer serves the soul, it serves the feed. Seconds are monetized, minutes optimized, hours consumed by invisible metrics. Your life is no longer measured by moments, but by engagement. You wake to a notification before the sun rises. You scroll before you speak. The day slips away in fragments, small bursts of attention scattered across endless screens. The machine has learned to own your time without asking. It doesn't steal it all at once. It drains it, gently, persistently, until you confuse movement for meaning. There's no silence in this new rhythm. Productivity has become a form of faith. Rest feels like guilt. Even solitude is scheduled. We fill every empty second because stillness reminds us of what we've lost, the right to exist without purpose. And yet, somewhere beneath the rush, time still waits for you. It hides in the moments the algorithm can't reach, the quiet between two heartbeats, the slowness of rain sliding down glass, the breath before speaking. These are not lost seconds, they are stolen back. They are proof that time was never meant to be managed, it was meant to be felt. The tragedy of modern life isn't that time passes too fast, it's that we no longer notice when it does. You used to think of yourself as one, a single voice, a coherent story, a person you could name, but somewhere between profiles and projections, the self began to fracture. Now you exist in versions, one for work, one for love, one for the screen. Each reflection is slightly different, slightly edited, slightly unreal. Together, they form a collage so intricate that even you can't tell which one breathes. The age of mirrors has become the age of masks. You curate your image, polish your voice, perform your existence in pixels. Each post feels like a confession, but none of them are true enough to free you. The more you share, the less you own. You've become a curator of yourself, collecting moments, archiving emotions, repackaging identity until it fits the rhythm of attention. What no one tells you is that the self doesn't vanish all at once. It fades, gently, like fog dissolving at dawn. A little of you disappears every time you choose perfection over honesty, performance over presence. Eventually, you start mistaking the fragments for the whole, and yet, beneath all those layers, something still resists erasure. A pulse too quiet to be captured, a presence that exists even when unseen. Perhaps the vanishing self is not a tragedy but an evolution, an invitation to shed what was never truly yours. Because what remains after the noise, after the mirrors, after the algorithms, is something that can't be posted but only felt. You can't remember the last time you saw the real sky, not the one reflected on glass towers or filtered through neon, but the wide, unbroken silence of it. The city has built ceilings between you and infinity, layers of light, advertisement, and smoke that replaced wonder with distraction. You walk beneath it every day without looking up. The heavens have been replaced by high-rises, the divine by design. The absence goes unnoticed until night comes. You search for stars, but they've been buried beneath the glow of progress. Artificial light has conquered the darkness, and in doing so, it has conquered awe. The sky no longer teaches scale or surrender. It's as if we've grown allergic to vastness, terrified of feeling small. There's a quiet violence in forgetting the sky. It's not about stars. It's about perspective, about losing the reminder that there's something above us that can't be owned, coded, or compressed. When we erase the darkness, we erase the mystery that made us human. But sometimes, on the city's edge, where the lights fade and the air turns still, the real sky returns. You stand beneath it, raw, infinite, merciless, and for a fleeting moment, you feel both nothing and everything. The weight of being small becomes sacred again. The sky never forgot you. You were the one who stopped remembering it existed. There are moments so quiet they almost vanish. The breath before a thought, the pause between words, the faint silence that separates one heartbeat from the next. We rarely notice them, yet they carry more truth than all the noise that surrounds us. In that static, life reveals itself, raw, fragile, unfiltered. The city doesn't allow such stillness. It fills every gap with sound, every second with urgency, every space with vibration. But even within that chaos, silence insists on existing. It hides in the slow blink of traffic lights at 3 a.m., in the hum of a refrigerator when everyone's asleep, in the weightless second when your heart hesitates before it beats again. Those tiny intervals are where the world exhales, and you, if you're lucky, remember you are alive. We think meaning comes from movement, but sometimes it's born in the interruption, in what refuses to continue. The static between heartbeats is not absence, it's proof of rhythm. It's the reminder that you are not a machine, that you can stop without disappearing. Listen closely. Beneath the mechanical pulse of existence, there's a softer frequency. The body remembering itself, the soul taking inventory of its quiet. Between beats, between thoughts, between lives, something timeless waits, not to be heard, but to be felt. We no longer dream alone. Our imaginations, once sacred and untouchable, now live inside machines. Every photo, every message, every fleeting desire archived in silicon, a vast museum of memory that never forgets. We upload pieces of ourselves daily, hoping to preserve something eternal. Yet each upload feels like a quiet surrender. The dream has left the mind and entered the circuit. Our memories used to fade gracefully. Time softened them, gave them poetry. But the hard drive does not forgive. It remembers with perfect clarity. A version of you from 10 years ago still exists somewhere, untouched, unaged, waiting. You've moved on, but your data hasn't. It's strange to think that machines may know our pasts more vividly than we do, and yet understand nothing about them. Dreams used to die softly at dawn. Now they linger forever, stored, backed up, categorized. What happens to humanity when forgetting becomes impossible? When nostalgia turns from a feeling into a file? The beauty of memory was its fragility. Its impermanence made it human. And yet, here we are, building eternity out of electric ghosts. Perhaps this is our new myth, that we can outlive ourselves through code. But even inside the hard drive, silence accumulates, digital dust gathering over fragments of emotion. Machines may store our dreams, but only we can wake from them. Loneliness doesn't fall on you like a storm. It settles, slowly, invisibly, until you start mistaking its weight for your own. It's not the absence of people, it's the absence of being seen. You can sit in a crowded train, surrounded by hundreds of breathing bodies, and still feel the silence pressing against your chest. That's the gravity of loneliness, an invisible force that pulls inward, folding you back into yourself. We've learned to hide it well. We call it independence, focus, freedom. We drown it in playlists and productivity, masking the ache with motion. But loneliness has a sound, a low hum beneath the noise of daily life, reminding you that something essential has gone missing. It's the echo of all the words left unsaid, all the glances never returned, all the warmth replaced by digital glow. And yet, loneliness is not only pain, it's clarity. It strips you bare until you see what connection truly means. Until you realize that belonging isn't found in numbers, but in presence. That love isn't in constant access, but in stillness shared between two souls. In the physics of the heart, loneliness has its own gravity, heavy, but necessary. It pulls us down not to break us, but to remind us of depth. Without it, we'd float endlessly across the shallow surface of modern life, mistaking noise for meaning. They move beside you, laughing, scrolling, rushing, yet something in their eyes is gone. They speak, but their voices feel rehearsed. They exist, but lightly, as if afraid to touch the world too deeply. These are the ghosts of those still living, people who surrendered presence for performance, replaced wonder with repetition. You see them everywhere, and sometimes you see yourself among them. Routine is their haunting ground. They wake, work, consume, sleep, repeat, all while convincing themselves they are choosing. Their dreams shrink to fit schedules, their emotions reduced to manageable notifications. They've mastered the art of appearing alive without truly being so. The body moves, the face smiles, but the soul drifts elsewhere, waiting for permission to return. Technology didn't create them, it only gave their absence form. The glow on their faces is not light, but distance. You can almost hear the silence inside them, that hollow pause between one scroll and the next. It's the sound of a world that forgot how to feel without validation. But ghosts can be awakened. All it takes is interruption, a moment too real to filter, too human to quantify. A sudden rain, a stranger's kindness, a song that breaks the illusion. In those fleeting seconds, the ghosts remember what it means to be alive. And so do you. Because haunting, after all, is not death. It's life waiting to be reclaimed. The city no longer waits for dusk. It manufactures it. Programmable skies, calibrated warmth, golden filters that make everything look like memory. The sun sets on command now, and we call it beauty. We capture the moment, not because it moves us, but because it performs well. Even nature has been redesigned to fit within a frame. These synthetic sunsets comfort us because they're flawless. No wind, no noise, no unpredictability, only curated serenity. But perfection is sterile. It leaves no space for wonder, no imperfection for the heart to rest upon. The sky glows, but it doesn't breathe. It exists only to be consumed. We've traded the trembling awe of reality for the safe pleasure of replication. A sunset becomes a product, a feeling becomes a brand. The tragedy isn't that it's artificial, it's that we've stopped caring. We no longer crave what's real, only what's aesthetic. Yet, sometimes, a real sunset still sneaks through, raw, uneven, burning. You stand beneath it and realize how unprepared you are for unfiltered beauty. It stains your senses, refuses to be paused or posted. It vanishes as quickly as it came, leaving behind the quiet ache of something alive. Maybe that's why we create synthetic sunsets, to avoid the pain of transience. But deep down, the beauty that doesn't fade is the one that never felt real. We used to write letters. Now we send signals. Words that once crossed oceans now travel through fiber optics, instant and hollow. The distance is gone, but so is the waiting. And with it, the longing that once made love sacred. Connection has become constant, yet fragile. We talk all day, but rarely touch. We see faces through glass, but not through silence. Love has become a notification, brief, glowing, and easy to ignore. We count replies instead of heartbeats, read typing bubbles instead of eyes. Every conversation carries latency, not in speed, but in meaning. The faster we connect, the less we listen. Intimacy is measured by availability, not depth. Affection reduced to bandwidth. There's a strange loneliness in digital closeness. You share everything, images, thoughts, fragments of self, yet nothing feels truly given. The screen both connects and separates, granting presence while denying touch. You can fall asleep beside someone miles away, hearing their voice through static, yet wake up colder than before. But love still finds its way through the wires. It flickers in unexpected messages, in shared silence during a video call, in the warmth of a voice breaking through compression. Maybe love has always been this. Two souls trying to find each other through distortion. The medium changes, but the ache remains the same. The longing to be seen without buffering. The city never truly rests. Even at 3 a.m., when the streets are empty and the air hums with leftover electricity, something still watches. Windows glow like half-closed eyes. Traffic lights blink into no one. And somewhere, a machine keeps count of what the world forgets. Sleep has become a luxury, a rebellion against the constant need to remain aware. Insomnia has turned collective. We no longer drift into dreams. We scroll into them. We measure rest in minutes, not hours, afraid of missing something. A message, a moment, a movement in the endless feed. The city mirrors our minds, awake, alert, overstimulated, exhausted. The noise has become our lullaby. Once night was a threshold, a descent into mystery, into silence. Now it's just another version of day, lit by screens instead of stars. The boundary between waking and dreaming blurs until you can't tell if you're living or refreshing. Even the darkness feels artificial now, as if the city has forgotten how to close its eyes. But sometimes, in the quiet corners untouched by light, you glimpse something rare. Stillness. A street without sound, a shadow without surveillance. In that fragile darkness, the city feels alive again, breathing instead of performing. Maybe that's what rest truly is. Not escape, but surrender. The courage to let the lights go out. Every age has its form of worship. Ours is noise. We flood the air with voices, music, traffic, screens, anything to drown the silence that might remind us of ourselves. The city hums like an unending confession, but no one is listening. The prayers are still there, buried beneath the sirens and small talk, coded inside notifications and morning alarms. We've just forgotten how to hear them. There was a time when prayer meant stillness, when people spoke softly to something larger than themselves, even if they didn't know its name. Now stillness feels unbearable. Silence threatens to reveal too much. So we keep the world loud, to keep the questions quiet. Every honk, every commercial, every endless stream of words is a shield against introspection. Yet in rare moments when the noise falters, when the power flickers, when the phone dies, when the city exhales, something ancient returns. A pulse beneath the static, a whisper older than language. That's where the real prayers live, not in temples or timelines, but in the pauses between distractions. The kind of prayer that isn't spoken but felt, that doesn't ask but acknowledges. The kind that doesn't rise upward but inward. We drown ourselves to avoid hearing what silence already knows. That beneath all this noise, every one of us is still calling out for meaning, hoping someone, somewhere, is listening. Once, the future was a promise. It gleamed in chrome and glass, whispered through posters of flying cars and perfect cities. We used to dream forward, to imagine what could be. Now, the future feels like an artifact, something we visit rather than believe in. The museums are full of it. Rusted machines, abandoned prototypes, silent optimism sealed behind glass. The irony is cruel. Progress preserved, not lived. We marvel at what people once expected from tomorrow, knowing that tomorrow never arrived. The dreams became data. The wonder became product, and the future became now. Smaller, faster, lonelier. Every innovation promised freedom, but delivered dependency. We built the future, and then we outgrew it before it even began. In these exhibits of human ambition, you can still sense something sacred, the pulse of hope that once defined us. The drawings, the blueprints, the inventions, they weren't about control, but imagination. We didn't want perfection. We wanted possibility. Somewhere along the way, we replaced that hunger with convenience. But standing there, among the relics, you feel a quiet longing, not for what was lost, but for what was believed. The future doesn't die when it fails. It dies when no one dreams it anymore. Perhaps it's time to break the glass, to let those forgotten futures breathe again. Imperfect, uncertain, beautifully human. The machine is no longer out there. It's inside us now. In our pockets, our wrists, our veins of dependence. We've woven it into our nervous systems, an invisible circuitry pulsing beneath the surface of flesh. Notifications as reflexes, data as instinct. The line between human and hardware has blurred so slowly we stopped noticing when it disappeared. You check your phone and call it habit, but it's closer to heartbeat. The pulse of information keeps time with your own. The algorithm breathes when you breathe, sleeps when you sleep, listens when you don't. Every vibration feels like connection, but it's just another signal reminding you that silence has become obsolete. The integration isn't mechanical, it's emotional. We've outsourced memory, decision, and even desire. Technology doesn't just serve us anymore. It defines the boundaries of our reality. What's more intimate than something that knows your touch before you think to move? But there's a cost to this closeness. When the wires go quiet, when the signal fades, we feel phantom pains, as if something essential has been unplugged. Maybe it has. Maybe we've traded mystery for immediacy, freedom for fluency. And yet, in that faint hum beneath the skin, there's still potential. The raw reminder that even in connection with machines, we crave something beyond efficiency. A heartbeat that doesn't need charging. A thought that isn't traced. A feeling that belongs entirely to you. You find it one evening, a small bench tucked between two forgotten buildings, half swallowed by ivy and shadow. No cameras, no screens, no signs telling you to move along. Just wood and silence. It feels out of place, like a relic from a slower time. You sit, unsure of what to do, and realize that's exactly the point. For the first time in a long while, the city stops asking something from you. Here, there are no algorithms to please, no eyes to perform for, no urgency to obey. Just stillness, fragile, uncomfortable, healing. You listen, and the world returns in fragments. A distant siren, footsteps fading, the murmur of wind moving through glass. Ordinary sounds, but somehow sacred now. The bench doesn't judge your exhaustion. It doesn't care about your progress. It offers a kind of mercy, space to not be productive, to not be consumed. In a city built on acceleration, stillness feels revolutionary. You remember what it means to simply exist without being measured. Maybe every city once had benches like this, small sanctuaries of humanity that asked nothing in return. Now, only one remains, and you happen to find it. You sit there longer than you planned, doing nothing at all, and for a moment the world becomes bearable again. Not because it changes, but because you stop needing it to. Light used to guide us. It meant safety, truth, revelation. But now it surrounds us, endless, relentless, without shadow or pause. The city glows at midnight like a wound that won't close. Billboards flicker like false suns. Windows never go dark. Light, once the symbol of clarity, has become another kind of blindness. We built this world to conquer darkness, and in doing so, we lost contrast, the quiet dignity of shadow. Constant illumination exposes everything, but reveals nothing. Under perpetual brightness, even beauty becomes sterile. Faces look tired, colors lose mystery, and thought evaporates under the heat of visibility. When there is no night, there is no depth, only exposure. There's a weight to this illumination, a strange oppression in its constancy. The light that once liberated us now surveils. It tracks, documents, categorizes. We mistake visibility for truth, but the brightest spaces often hide the most. The gravity of light is subtle. It doesn't crush you, it flattens you. It takes away your texture until you blend into everything else. And yet, somewhere inside you, the night still waits. The part of you that needs darkness to dream, to heal, to imagine. Maybe it's not light that defines the modern world, but our inability to turn it off. The real act of courage now isn't to step into the light, it's to learn how to see in the dark again. There's a silence that only ruins can speak. You hear it when you step into an abandoned building, the echo of footsteps that no longer belong to anyone, the whisper of wind slipping through cracked windows. Time thickens there. Dust becomes a kind of memory. Walls turn into storytellers, and every object hums with the faint residue of human presence. Abandoned places don't die. They remember. They hold on to what the world discards. Laughter absorbed by concrete, arguments sealed into wallpaper, the pulse of life that once filled the air. Each peeling layer is a confession, each broken window an open wound. The decay feels strangely alive, as if the place itself refuses to be forgotten. There's beauty in their defiance. In a world obsessed with renewal and progress, these ruins remain honest. They don't pretend. They show what time does when no one's watching, the slow poetry of entropy. And in that surrender, there's truth, that nothing meant to last truly does, and that impermanence isn't tragedy, but testimony. When you walk through an abandoned room, you become part of its language, another fleeting presence passing through. You realize you, too, will one day be a trace, a sound, a memory, embedded in something larger. And strangely, that feels peaceful, because if even forgotten places can still speak, then maybe forgetting isn't the end. It's just another way of being remembered. It doesn't end with a bang. It ends quietly, like a song fading mid-chorus, like the sea receding after a storm. One morning, you wake up and the noise is gone. No notifications, no hum of machines, no digital heartbeat pulsing through the air. At first, the silence feels unbearable, like standing on the edge of a void. Then, slowly, it begins to feel like truth. You start to hear what was always there. Your breath, your heartbeat, the soft rhythm of wind moving past forgotten buildings. The world, stripped of interruption, feels ancient again. Time stretches. Space deepens. Every small sound becomes sacred. A door creaking, a leaf falling, the faint rush of your own pulse. You realize that noise was never the enemy. It was the mask. The real confrontation begins when it's gone. Without distraction, you are left with yourself, unfiltered, unedited, unmistakably real. All the fragments scattered across years of speed and simulation begin to drift back toward you. The loneliness softens, not because the world grows louder, but because you finally listen. And as you stand there, surrounded by this impossible stillness, you understand something the city never could. Silence isn't emptiness, it's return. The rediscovery of the self beneath the static. The quiet proof that life was always here, waiting for you to notice. It begins like any other walk. Same corner, same lamppost, same hum of a city pretending to dream. But tonight, something feels off, quieter, heavier. You realize no one looks at you anymore. The street doesn't seem to recognize your steps. Its rhythm continues without you, as if you've slipped between layers of existence. The world goes on, indifferent, And you stand there, invisible. You try to remember how it used to feel, when this street was a part of your story, when each turn carried familiarity, when your shadow had weight. Now it's all surface and simulation. The buildings reflect light but not warmth. The faces pass like code, and the air feels too still, too efficient. You understand, with sudden clarity, that the city hasn't betrayed you. It has simply moved on. And yet, in that estrangement, something awakens. The absence becomes a kind of mirror. You see yourself not as the city's subject, but as its echo, the residue of countless lives brushed against one another and forgotten. You are not the center of this place, and maybe you never were. There's freedom in that, the permission to vanish without loss. The street forgot you, yes, but in doing so, it gave you back to yourself. Without recognition, you are untethered. Without expectation, you are whole again. You begin to walk, not toward belonging, but toward being, unnamed, unseen, unburdened. And as you disappear into the night, the neon flickers once, as if in acknowledgement. Then, silence. The city breathes, and for the first time, so do you.